Welcome to our new Connect. Discover our newest features. Today's agenda is basically to learn a bit more about advanced reconciliations. Then we will be exploring integrations, data analysis, and the operator agent, also known as the Simetrik Assistant. So now we're going to start with the universal reconciliator. The idea is to review a bit, since in the last two Connects we've been talking about advanced reconciliations. So, the idea is that advanced reconciliations enhance your experience in implementing use cases, as they will provide us with more options in the configuration part. For example, configuration is now done at the rule set level. This is because we have different types of reconciliations. It can be the reconciliation rule set or also compensation. These two are based precisely, for example, on the fact that in reconciliation rule set you can perform a grouping. Transactional and grouping, transactional, the ones we already basically know, but that all of this you can carry out directly in a single reconciliation. And then we have what would be the compensated ones, which, in the case that you need to achieve that famous zero effect, for example, if you have sales and refunds in one column and you need to clean up that reconciliation, you can also do it within the same one and directly have everything in a single reconciliation without needing to perform multiple reconciliations to obtain that result. On the other hand, we also have what we call transaction segments, which are the specific groups that will be created in certain columns, and you can select these. Up to 25 segments can be selected from a resource, and then based on that we move into the rule set and start selecting those segments there through different rule set that we will be configuring. We continue with integrations. In integrations, from the self-managed module, we enabled in this version, which was released on March 18th if I'm not mistaken, the ability for you to generate exports to this new type of resource starting from that date. This is a resource that is fully enabled and configured from the Universal Reconciliator, but at the export level, it will allow you to configure exports by events and on a recurring basis. Additionally, you'll be able to request the setup of notifications via API for those event-based configurations you already have for this type of resource. On top of that, this version also includes some improvements within recurring exports. Previously, recurring exports were executed at a fixed time, 2:00 a.m. Colombia time, and from the self-managed module, we hadn't yet provided the option for you to apply a series of optional filters that would let you further specify the information you wanted to export. This has been resolved with this version. Let me also remind you that everything related to exports within the integrations module is an extension, so it's necessary to first contract this service and request the activation of that extension in order to enjoy these new features. Let's move to the Simetrik app. Alright team, this is a bit of an overview of the integrations module, specifically when the extension is already active. You'll notice that we have two tabs that will always be available to everyone, and these three refer to everything related to exports. Within the exports menu, you'll have the option to create a new export, and you'll encounter this three-step form where essentially, you need to assign a name to the export you want to create and select the type of resource. Here's what I mentioned earlier. We already had 4 types of resources: sources, opening source, reconciliations, and union of sources. And now we're adding this 5th one, which is advanced reconciliations. It's super important that when you get to this configuration, an advanced reconciliation type resource has already been created in the reconciler so you can select and assign it from here. Basically, after choosing the resource type, we'll provide you with a list of all the reconciliations, in this case, advanced ones, that exist so you can associate an export with them. I'm going to select this one that doesn't have any exports created yet. You'll also have the option to choose the types of exports. On one hand, there are event-based exports, which, just to remind you a bit, mean that every time a specific trigger is met within the resource, you'll receive an output file based on the export's configuration. On the other hand, with recurring exports, what happens is that you'll be able to choose the days, the time zone, and apply any filters you want for that export. For recurring exports, we also have some visibility into the improvements here. One thing we've done is give you flexibility to choose which days you want your export to run. By default, it will always be active from Monday to Friday, considering that the availability of information based on use cases is typically something you, our clients, need consistently, which is why it's pre-selected. you'll be able to choose the time and day you want the information to arrive at your internal repositories. And since we have clients in different regions, you'll also be able to select the time zone in which you want that execution to take place. In my case, I'm in GT because I'm in Bogota, and it could be 10 o'clock a.m. Something important about this type of export is that it's essential to generate a date filter. This ensures that you receive updated information every day. In this case, it's important to select a column available in the previously chosen resource that is a date type. The filter comes by default set to the day prior to the execution, meaning that every day you'll receive the information from the previous day. Among the improvements, we also have optional filters. Here, what we're essentially doing is giving you the ability to add up to 3 optional filters. You'll find all the columns belonging to the resource listed, except for the date columns, which are used in the previous section. Depending on the data type of each column, different operators will be available so you can create exactly the filter you need. Step 1. An open text field where you can enter the specific value to filter by. In my case, one of the filters I could apply is that I'd like to receive, every day at 10 o'clock a.m., everything with a reconcile status from the previous day. In step 2, what we'll have is the ability to select which columns from the resource I need in that export. Something that has changed here is that, in the past, we somewhat forced the date filter column set in step 1 to always be present in the output file. This is no longer necessary. Several of our users want to apply that filter but don't necessarily need that information in the exported file. So, you now have complete freedom to choose only the columns you require or want to be present in that output file. You can select all of them and organize them according to your needs. Or you could also select just some, depending on what you require. The rest of the fields remain the same. You still need to choose the maximum file size. Here, a reminder, opt for a single file if possible. Be very mindful that if the export exceeds 5 GB, it won't be able to run. The recommendation is to choose multiple files and try to set the maximum limit at which you want those files to be generated. It's not a fixed limit, but it will always be respected that the multiple files generated don't exceed the weight you've selected. The format can be CSV or Parquet, and then there's the destination. Remember that it's also essential to have requested a connection or destination through support beforehand, as those are the options you'll find here to select. In step 3, what we're providing is a quick overview of everything configured earlier. You can confirm that once the export is created, you'll return to the initial list view, where you'll see it with an active status and have the option to edit it. If you want to know which specific resource the export was generated from, you can access it through this link. It will open a new tab where you can go directly to the spreadsheet for that reconciliation. In this case, regarding editing, you'll be able to modify almost all the fields in the form, except for those that give the export its unique identity, specifically the resource type, the resource it's connected to, and the export mode for this reconciliation. You could also generate an event-based export where the process is essentially the same, except the trigger will change. Since this is event-based, we have 2 main possibilities. On one hand, there's the option for unreconciled records, which basically means that every day, whenever the reconciliation runs, it will generate that information that's still pending reconciliation. This is one of the event-based modes. The other option covers all the other triggers, which are essentially the changes that occur in the records within the reconciliation. You can choose one, several, or all of them. In this case, for advanced reconciliations, as you know, we don't just have reconciliation rule set, but also compensation rule set. So, from the export, you'll also have visibility into those types of events related to compensation or decompensation. The following steps remain the same. The only new thing here is for event-based exports. We're giving you the option to include additional columns that identify the event itself. This is, let's say, very valuable when there are issues like incidents or errors, as it also allows us to have better traceability. Their selection is completely optional. On the right side, everything stays the same. You'll be able to view them, search among the columns you have, and sort them. We then select the size, format, and destination. In step 3, we have the same summary for confirmation. Once created, we return to the initial list view. Now, whenever these two exports we just created are executed, either because they meet the scheduled execution time or because one of the triggers occurs, in the case of events happening, you can come here to the Export Monitor tab and get visibility into those executions, their status, which resource they're linked to, which export it was, and whether we have files generated from that export. Through the details, you can access the list of files that were generated. Now we'll move on to data analysis. The idea is that you can start seeing the results of your advanced reconciliations and perform any type of analysis directly in the module designed for that purpose. Ready? So you'll have a new group of visuals called Advanced Reconciliation Status, which will show you a summary of the status of each entry within that advanced reconciliation. As you know, you'll have reconciled entries, compensated entries, unreconciled entries, and adjusted entries. The goal is for this to provide you with a very general overview of the status on both side A and side B of that reconciliation. This way, you should be able to start managing your processes directly here. Additionally, advanced reconciliations can now be used in any of the individual visuals already available in data analysis, which are the four you see at the bottom: custom tables, pivot tables, charts, or individual KPIs. The aim is for you to build a dashboard that helps you see the results in a very straightforward way and provides a summary of how that advanced reconciliation is performing. And additionally, the idea is, or rather in the latest version we had, which is 0.17, we also have some improvements to pivot tables. Specifically, these improvements will apply both to the pivot tables you've already created up to now and to any pivot tables you create going forward. The main improvements we have are 4 things, and now you'll be able to filter the grouping criteria you use in stacks. When you configure your pivot table, any column you use as a grouping criterion in rows will allow you to filter that information, making it much easier to navigate. Plus, you'll retain the sorting options, so you can sort the table's information in ascending or descending order. The second improvement is that you'll be able to select the same column in the values section of the configuration. What this allows you to do is apply different operations to the same column. For example, if you have an amount column, you can select it twice, once with the sum operation and once with the absolute sum operation, and you'll be able to see both results. The third improvement we have is a new operation, also in the values section, called countdown. This operation will let you see the number of distinct values in that column. For instance, if you select a franchise column and apply this operation, and there are 4 different franchises in the data, it will show you the number of unique records the system finds. The final improvement is to make configuration much simpler. When you select a grouping criterion, whether in rows or columns, you'll be able to group date or date and time columns by days, weeks, or months. This makes it much easier to analyze the data and adapt it to your needs. So, as I was mentioning, when you go into the dashboard section in data analysis, the idea is that you can monitor your advanced reconciliations. This is a dashboard I created exclusively with one of the advanced reconciliations we have. The first thing we have is the Advanced Reconciliation Status visual group, which shows you a summary in terms of both values and records for both side A and side B of the reconciliation. It will show you how many records are reconciled on side A, how many are reconciled on side B. We also now have sections for compensated, unreconciled, and adjusted records. So, for all the statuses a transaction can have within an advanced reconciliation, the goal is for this to generate a summary and let you see how it's performing. This is the general summary of the reconciliation. Additionally, you'll be able to create individual KPIs where you perform a calculation and highlight a key figure that's important to you. You'll also be able to generate charts. Right now, we have 4 types of charts: bars, stacked bars, donuts, and line charts. You'll be able to configure them as needed with your advanced reconciliations, as well as use pivot tables and custom tables. The idea is that this gives you all the flexibility you need to manage your use case. I'll focus here on the pivot table to show you some of the specific improvements we have in these visuals. One thing you'll notice much more clearly now is which criteria you selected as column groupers. They'll now have a color that makes it easier to distinguish those values. Also, As I mentioned, you'll now have filters that let you, for example, filter the information from a specific column and see only those results. For instance, in this case with Argentina and Colombia, it resubmits the request and brings back the result. The goal is for this to help you navigate and make it much easier to manage your use cases. And, as I said, you'll also be able to maintain sorting options, either ascending or descending. In this case, I have it set to descending, but I can also switch it to ascending so you can view your results. For the other improvements we have, we need to go to the configuration section to see them. So, what are these new configuration options you'll be able to use? When you select any date column, whether in rows or columns, you'll now see this selector that lets you choose whether you want to group by days, weeks, or months, allowing you to view the results however you need them. You'll also be able to select the same column, like an amount column, in the values section multiple times. For example, here I selected A amount twice with different operations. And the final improvement in this section is this new operation called Count Distinct, which counts the unique records you have in that column. Unlike Count, which counts every instance of a record, this only counts each unique record once. Those are the improvements we have, and I hope they help you manage your advanced reconciliations. Our latest presentation is Simetrik Agents. I'm very excited to introduce you to the first release of what we're calling the Agents Initiative in Simetrik. The agents aim to make Simetrik, in general, much more proactive, and our vision is to anticipate our clients' needs and help them resolve incidents before they turn into problems. This first release of agents is primarily focused on helping you address issues related to file uploads in Simetrik and problems that arise from transforming data from one format to another, which is a common occurrence. This is because we've noticed that a large portion, a very significant portion, of the support tickets we receive are related to file upload issues or data transformation problems. Our users, both implementers and clients, spend a considerable amount of time doing manual validation tasks to ensure these issues aren't affecting them. This first agent monitors what it does. It monitors the sources coming into Simetrik that are associated with reconciliations or reconcilable groups, and it takes care of alerting users about issues, as I mentioned, related to file uploads or data transformation. So it keeps you informed about when the information is incomplete, there are casting errors, or there are columns with unusual data or errors of any kind. The first thing you'll notice is that in the top right corner, there's a notification that gives you a summary of what the agent detected that day. So far, I've analyzed 5 sources here, if some don't have incidents and others do. On the left, you can see that same summary, and on the right, you can view each of the incidents as a card. If we go into the source, here we can see all the incidents that people have detected for that specific source. They're all numbered here, for example, and I can manage each of these issues. I can mark them as resolved or ignore them. Either way, they'll move to the resolved column. This type of agent notifies you about quite a variety of issues. Here's the detail of all the issues that people are proactively monitoring. Null values, empty columns, missing files that literally couldn't be uploaded to Simetrik for any reason. Significant variations in transaction volume. For example, this record normally has 10,000 transactions, and today it came with 7,500. That would trigger an alert. Considerable changes in record length, like an ID, for instance. Imagine the average ID in a column is 9 characters, and today it came with 11 characters. That would likely cause an error in the reconciliation, so we'd flag it practically. New values not historically present. For example, the name of a status changed in how it's written, or a new status was added that isn't being accounted for. We'll alert you about that. Files that come completely empty due to issues of any kind or errors. Other errors in data transformation. Something very common, for example. What happens with dates when the date format changes? That's it. This is the first, as I'm telling you, the first release of the Agents Initiative. We'll continue rolling out agents in the near future that will focus on proactively detecting other types of issues we know are frequent within the Simetrik product. And just so you're aware, this won't come with an additional cost for our clients. It needs to be manually activated by the support team or your CSM. Our projected launch date is next week at the latest, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, we'll notify you as soon as this is launched, and we'll also inform the team so they can activate it for each of the sources where you need it. I think that's it then. If you have any doubts or questions, you know you can reach out to your CSM and they'll pass those questions along to us. Thank you all so much for participating. See you at the next Connect.